The trades just keep on coming in the NFL. First, we had Davante Adams and Amari Cooper head to the AFC East. Well, how about the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs bolstering its depleted wide receiver room? DeAndre Hopkins will reportedly be sent to Kansas City in return for a fifth-round pick that could become a fourth if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. As the saying goes, the rich get richer. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tommy John Studio in New York City. I am your host, Charlie DiSturco, and this is Green Dot Daily, coming to you live every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. We've got early NFL Week 8 picks with Evan Abrams, the numbers guy. Evan tells me if the numbers are worth backing in the early week thoughts or if I'm way over my head on some disgusting underdogs like the Titans. Plus, Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy hop on to discuss the parody of the college football landscape and how it's anybody's game this year. We're also here from Mike Calabrese on Notre Dame and Navy. This is not your father's service academy. Navy is Legit. But let's start on the gridiron, where it's been a crazy last few weeks of the college football season where we've seen plenty of movement among the top five in terms of college football rankings. Here's how things stand between Brett McMurphy's AP poll and Collin Wilson's power ratings. Georgia's win over the weekend has solidified the Bulldogs as Collin's number one, while Brett rides with the Oregon Ducks, his original preseason number one. As you can see, there's no difference in teams at hand in the top five, just the order at which they come, as we welcome in Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy to talk more about the college football week ahead. Collin, I'll kick it to you first. You know, we've seen so many, movement in the top five, so much movement. Alabama rose up after beating Georgia. Then Texas becomes this new number one. They lose. Now we have a new number one with Oregon yet again. Do you think that this parity, right? We always expected, is someone going to unseat Saban or Kirby Smart's Georgia? It feels like now there's parity in college football. And do you think a lot of that has to do with the NIL and the ability to transfer just year over year?
Yeah, I mean, there is major parity in college football around, especially from a power ratings perspective. Like the AP poll and power ratings in Vegas are all starting to come together and have it identify the same teams. Because my top four, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, they're separated by 2 points if they were all to play on a neutral field. So you can see how tight it is here. As far as parity, people want to say, look at all these teams that have gotten so much better. People think it's the transfer portal. It's not. The transfer portal is a conduit. It is nothing more than a metal stick sticking straight up into the atmosphere. It's the NIL that has been the lightning bolt that has infused all of these other programs to rise up and give a challenge off these blue bloods. So I would really say it's NIL. It's not the transfer portal.
Brett, I'm curious your thoughts on the transfer portal as a whole, too, like leading to this. I mean, it feels like the college football playoffs this year is going to be highly entertaining because I don't really know if there's a clear doubt number one. What are your thoughts on the transfer portal and all of that at hand with the parity of college football?
Well, yeah, I mean, Colin's right about the NIL, but if there's no transfer portal, there's no NIL. I mean, you're bringing these players to these schools because of the inducement of making money. In the past, it wasn't that long ago. It's almost like seems like caveman days now, where coaches could actually designate where a player leaving his program could go. If, for instance, you were an SEC school, you could basically tell the player you cannot go to another SEC school. That was within the rules. Obviously, we are a million miles away from that now. So the ability of these guys to go to whatever schools they want, whenever they want, and make whatever they want, I think a combination of all that is, crystallized to the point that, like, I agree with Collin, there is not a great team this year. There are a lot of really good teams. And as much as we think, wow, this team's really the best team, everyone's jumping all over how good Georgia is. Their offense didn't do much against Texas, but they won the game. And this same Georgia team almost lost to Kentucky and also gave up 31 to Mississippi State. So I think it's whoever stays hot, if you will, and avoids injury is ultimately who will win this thing when we finally get to December and January.
Right. You mentioned just the amount of good teams that there are in college football. It's not just, like I said earlier, Saban's Alabama, Kirby Smart running away with Georgia. Can anyone beat either of them year over year? It feels like, this is the opportunity to do so. So I'll kick it right back to you, Brett. Take me through your current college football playoff bracket that you have, your winner, and all of that.
Yeah, I have Oregon, winning it all. I think, Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and Iowa State will be the 4 conference champions. I think Miami and Iowa State will get eliminated in the quarterfinal round. And then I think, look, it's great. We've got a 12-team playoff. More people are invited to the party. That's the good news. The bad news is it's the usual suspects when we get down to the semifinals. And I think it's going to be all Big Ten, all SEC when we get to the semifinals. And then, right now, like Oregon and Georgia, ask me in 2 weeks, I may change, but I picked Oregon in the preseason. I'm going to stick with them until they prove me wrong. So I'm all aboard the Ducks.
Collin, I'll go to you next. I mean, there's two kind of key differences between yours and Brett's. That is the national champion itself, and then also your ACC school. You actually have one making it to the semifinals. So tell me more about your bracket.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot of big difference between Brett and I. At the end of the bracket, I say Oregon and Georgia are in the national championship, and Georgia's going to win. We'll see. Like we said, they're separated by 2 points in the power rating, so who knows? We'll see when we get there. But Clemson is going to win the ACC over Miami or SMU in the ACC championship. They'll get that spot, and I think because of how the bracket falls and the way it fell in my bracket, they're going to be able to advance into the semifinals. But it's really no shock that Clemson, a team that's won a couple national championships, is in the semifinals. Not a big shock. If you had the chance to listen to the new BCS podcast this past week, I've gone back and listened to it 3 times to make sure I wasn't off my mark. Look at my seeds 9 through 11. I thought Stuckey was just going to get up and walk off the podcast in the middle of it. We got SMU, we've got Indiana, we've got Kansas State. The reason I've included these teams is because I see them sweeping the remainder of the schedule. And when you sweep the remainder of the schedule and you got 0 losses or 1 loss like Kansas State, and you're just blocked from your conference championship game, you should get consideration over a 2-loss SEC team. So, I mean, if you put this up against Brett's bracket, he's going to have Texas A&M and one in the 10th spot, and LSU in the 9th spot. So this argument with the college football playoff coming up in 2 weeks when the first ranking comes out, we're going to find out if 2-loss SEC teams are greater than 1 loss and potentially 0 losses in ACC, because SMU, Miami, Clemson, they're all on track to be undefeated heading into championship weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be so fun to just watch how this all develops. Curt Cignetti at Indiana has done an unbelievable job to put the Hoosiers into national relevance, making a college football playoff. I don't think is, an outside chance like you mentioned. I think there is an opportunity for them to make some noise. And of course, we'll see in a couple of weeks, and we'll be continuing to talk throughout the college football season as games finish on. You mentioned the SEC. There's still a lot of top-ranked matchups, a lot of opportunities for teams to kind of slide from, a 1-loss SEC team to 2 or 3. Alabama obviously being one of those over the weekend, falling down to 2. But guys, we can't let you go without a couple of best bets. Brett, you're up first. We got Texas, Vandy, Texas, 3 touchdown favorites against the Commodores. Tell me what you see in this one.
I like Vanderbilt, getting 3 touchdowns. That's when I put it in the app. I know the numbers come down off of 21. I still like Vanderbilt. I mean, Texas is in an impossible situation right now. They're coming off not only the Red River rivalry shootout, whatever you want to call it, against Oklahoma, but also coming off that emotional loss to Georgia. That was a Super Bowl. Now they travel to play Vanderbilt in Nashville. Diego Pavia and the Commodores will eat up the clock. Clark Lee has been very open. They want to shorten possessions. They want to shorten the game when they play these type of teams. They did it against Alabama. I think they'll do it again. I don't think they're going to win outright, but I think they'll keep it within the number. Look, the knee-jerk reaction of people is to play off a team coming off their first loss. Oh, they're going to be really pissed off and motivated, and they're going to take out their frustrations and crush that team in the following week. Wrong. You're wrong. It's the opposite. They're deflated. There are 3 power conference teams that fit that scenario, all with national title aspirations, all set for their first loss in October, facing a conference opponent the next week, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. They all failed to cover the following week, 0-3 against the spread, losing by an average of 10 points against the spread. The Commodores make that 0-4. Also, keep your eye out for Ohio State, Nebraska. That's a similar situation. Ohio State coming off their first loss, although Ohio State had the benefit of having a bye since that first loss.
Yeah, Vanderbilt definitely a tricky team. Beating Bama, beating Kentucky, Pavia has been pretty great as a transfer over there to Vanderbilt. We were talking transfer portal and NIL and all of that at hand. Collin, you're up next. You're targeting Ole Miss. They're playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma has just absolutely spiraled out of control this season. You like Ole Miss to continue to beat down on the Sooners?
Yeah, before I talk about how much I love the Rebels, is the world really ready for Nashville to take down a second goal post in one season? I'm not really sure, but we're going to stick with Ole Miss minus 20. I think there's some 20.5s out there. This is the number one defensive havoc team in the country. They play behind the line of scrimmage on defense, tackles for loss, PBUs, causing fumbles. They are a nasty bunch, and they're going up against the 127th ranked offense and havoc allowed with Oklahoma. That offensive line can't keep anybody from being all over their quarterbacks. And Jackson Arnold is now the starter again for Oklahoma. He has been horrific with hands in his face. He has 10 big-time throws and 10 turnover-worthy plays a lifetime. Those numbers are even worse when he has a pressured pocket. And then you look and see what's going on with this offensive staff with Oklahoma. Like, I don't understand how anybody can bet on Oklahoma when they fire their offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell. They're going to have Kevin Johns, who was kind of watching the quarterback coach. He's now going to be calling the bulk of the plays. But the big thing that people are not handicapping is that co-OC Joe John Finley was the guy on the sidelines pumping up the team, getting everybody organized, making sure everybody was in place. They took him off the sidelines, and they're putting him up in the booth with Kevin Johns to call plays. I think Oklahoma is losing a major factor that they have on the sidelines. Not that the offense is that great, but you're taking away a stable component on the sidelines and putting him up in the booth. I just think it's a disaster for Oklahoma. So let's take Ole Miss minus 20, minus 20.5, number one defensive havoc team in the nation.
Yeah, Jackson Dart looking good on the offensive end as well. And listen, Oklahoma, it feels like the season's just, panic button slipping away. You mentioned all the changes they're making. 69-12, they've been outscored over the last couple of weeks, one of which they were absolutely dominated in a surprise, just beat down by South Carolina. Feels like this season's kind of over for the Sooners. But Brett McMurphy, Collin Wilson, appreciate you guys hopping on, and we'll talk again next week. And if you want access to all of Action Pro's projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. You'll also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro. Today, use code GDD20 at sign up. Once again, GDD20 at sign up for $20 off. Let's keep the good times rolling in the world of college football and bring on Mike Calabrese to talk more about the slate ahead. We heard a couple of best bets from Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy. We have 5 ranked college football games this weekend, the most all season, Mike. So we have to discuss one of them at least in your NCAA football simulation. And what better than Notre Dame and the undefeated Naval Academy, Navy, maybe vying for a college football playoff spot out of that G5 land. Mike, tell me what the simulation said before we get your actual take on this game.
Damn the torpedoes. Navy was unafraid in this one. Just a quick caveat as we roll some of the footage. I was unable to perfectly match it up, having them play in MetLife Stadium, unavailable in College Football 25. A little shout out to their producers. They need to get that right. So I put them up in Fenway Park in the Fenway Bowl. That's the best I could do for a neutral site in the Northeast. Notre Dame, unfortunately, edging out Navy, ending that perfect season. They win 19-14. Very dramatic ending to this game. Navy took a lead with under 2 minutes to go. Notre Dame hits a long touchdown pass in response, and then they intercept Blake Horvath with under 30 seconds remaining in the game to seal it. Eli Heidenreich, who's been a big play runner and receiver for the Middies the entire season. He was that in this one. He did most of his damage on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns. Lots of negative plays back and forth, lots of punts. 17 tackles for loss in total, but Notre Dame outgained Navy by 181 yards. But much like a triple option team in a dream scenario, they were able to muck this game up, have it be tight in the final minutes. They took the lead, as I mentioned, but they weren't able to hold on. I think that's going to be pretty close to the reality on Saturday.
Yeah, since that dud against Northern Illinois, Notre Dame has looked, more sharp of late, but it is Navy. It is MetLife, probably the best football game that we'll see at MetLife, at least that we have to date between the Jets and the Giants. Football's not a strong suit over there at MetLife Stadium. I'm curious your thought, though, Mike, with this game. we've talked time and time again about Navy. This is not just a triple option offense. They actually have an explosive, well-rounded one. They've been putting up big numbers just week after week. 13-point underdogs, opened around 2 touchdowns, has come down a bit since. Do you think Navy, and I think you do, keep it close with Notre Dame?
Yeah, anchors away. Let's play Navy here. I think they're going to flirt with the outright upset. I'm happy to take the points anywhere north of 10 in this one. And it really boils down to the fact this is not your granddaddy's Navy offense. Drew Cronick comes in from Mercer with his wing T infusion for this offense, and all of a sudden they're scoring in bunches. They have the 4th highest scoring offense in all of college football, and they've unlocked so much through the air. That's been the difference. Blake Horvath, for the majority of this season, has been top 5 in QBR, which is just unheard of for a triple option quarterback. But to hang around here, he's got to hit plays in the passing game consistently. And what's interesting is a lot of it used to just be tagged on with play actions out of the triple. But now they run all these sophisticated concepts. When you watch some of the plays that they get, wide receivers and running backs wide open in the secondary, you look at a play like mesh rail, which essentially means you got crossing routes over the middle and you sneak a running back on a wheel route out of the backfield. That's straight out of a Chip Kelly playbook, a spread option playbook. Alabama ran it to great success against Georgia in the SEC title game last year. So they're doing big boy offensive aerial shots down the field. And I think that's what's going to make it difficult for Notre Dame to prepare, because they didn't have a bye week. They didn't have a bye week in the last 3 to get prepared with some extra practice time to be able to sprinkle in some of the looks that they're going to see. So I think that's what is going to tip in the favor of the Naval Academy here. And Horvath, as I mentioned, he's been successful, not just from a QBR perspective, but once he gets to the minimum threshold for pass attempts this season, 12.3 yards per attempt through the air. He'll lead the country in that category. So I think Navy is going to make this a 4-quarter battle.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And like Notre Dame can't just prep for them and Army like in past where, maybe options kind of come similar. You mentioned it, Navy's offense, completely different, 34-plus points in every single game this season. I'm curious your thoughts too, because obviously Notre Dame lost to NIU, and it feels like obviously they're on the path toward the CFP, but a loss here could be detrimental to their future. Navy in general, we talked how their game against Army will come after the CFP is actually decided. Do you think a win here, an outright 13-point upset, is enough, assuming all goes well where they'll be favored the rest of the season, is enough to put them in the CFP above a team like UNLV or Boise State?
Absolutely, I do. I think if it comes with an upset win over Notre Dame, a team that as of right now, if the playoff committee was putting together their 12-team field, they would be in it. And you had that marquee win earlier in the season against Memphis where they scored 56 points. I've said it time and time again. The playoff committee is essentially assembling a TV show. This is an entertainment product. And you saw it last year when they bumped out Florida State for Alabama. They want to put together something that viewers want to tune in for. I know that we try to always frame it through who's the best team in the country, who's deserving. That's a lot of window dressing. They want to put participants in this field that are going to draw eyeballs. And I have to tell you, whether it's Army or Navy, that story is so unique. It's going to be steeped in history. There's going to be footage of Roger Staubach playing for Navy, playing in the pregame. It's going to get people butts in the seats at the stadium and eyeballs on the screen. So I think if they run the table, including an upset of Notre Dame, they're absolutely in.
Yeah, nostalgia brewing for Navy. A win this weekend probably puts them in the driver's seat for that G5 spot. It's definitely must-watch TV of all the ranked games. This one feels like one of the closest when it comes to potential outright upsets. A lot of other spreads, ballooning toward that 20-point mark or higher. But we can't let you go without a best bet for tonight. Of course, we'll talk to you again in a bit about the weekend ahead. But tonight, Liberty plays Kennesaw State at 7 p.m. They are another team that, received a vote in the AP Top 25, can be considered for that G5 final CFP spot. Liberty 25.5-point favorites. How do you see this one playing out?
Liberty not only has to run the table, go undefeated, including a Conference USA title game win with 13-0 on their sheet, but they also have to start stacking some impressive runaway victories because, unfortunately, unlike the teams we talk about out of the AAC and the Mountain West, they don't have that marquee win. Realistically, it was supposed to be that App State game. It was canceled due to a hurricane, but even so, App State was having a down year. So Liberty's only chance is to win and to win decisively. Now, if you looked at this game back in August, this number would have been closer to the Flames -40. It's down into the mid-20s. And the reason for it is that they've looked a little bit lackluster offensively. for much of the season, if we're being honest. But in their last game against FIU, it goes to overtime, but they ran for 281 yards in that game, 4 rushing touchdowns. They fumbled going into the end zone. They also kicked a short field goal. So they left points on the table. Against Kennesaw, I think they're going to have a similar offensive experience. I think they're going to run up close to 500 total yards and score in the 40s. So the question is, can Kennesaw succeed at all offensively? The short answer is absolutely not. The Owls have the worst offense in America. They're bottom 3 in total offense, passing offense, and rushing offense per PFF. And I'm someone who makes a living watching G5 football. I like to boost these guys up, look for the silver lining. This team was just not prepared. This program was not prepared to jump up to the FBS level. How far are they from really being competitive? How about this? Bill Connelly ranks every single college football team in America all the way down to the NIL ranks. So you go from 1 to, I think, 764. He has this team ranked 270th. That's far below Division II Virginia Union. That's how far away Kennesaw is from being competitive. I think Liberty's going to get on them early. They have no mode. There's no switch on their offense on the Kennesaw side to play from behind. So I think this is going to be a runaway for the Flames.
Yeah, Kennesaw State football, not its strong suit like the basketball program a couple years back. But it does feel like, you mentioned the look ahead line, the need for Liberty to start stacking up some huge wins and wins by a lot. They should never take their foot off the gas pedal in this one. So getting less than 4 touchdowns feels like a nice bargain based on, early season to now looking at this one here. But Mike Calabrese, appreciate you hopping on. We'll talk again before the weekend, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Charlie. Salute to our servicemen.
Yeah, I think we're back. I think after all our other test pilot islands, Brendan, I think we're back where all the islands started a couple years ago. Seattle Island, baby. I think this is where we're at. I think the Seahawks still now are the team in the entire NFL with the best futures market to be betting into. Geno Smith playing great football, absolutely dealing, still leads the league in completions, attempts, yards. Mike McDonald, I still believe in as well. That's the coach of the year that I had before the season. I still think that he's a good pick there. I believe he's like 16, 18, 20 to 1, depending on your book. Remember, they host Minnesota late in the season as well. So that's a chance to get a big win and to flip a tiebreak there in some of the standings. They did lose to Detroit already, so that's a bummer. Just overall, I think Seattle, you like a lot what you see. They're getting healthier now. Look, they weren't 20 points better than Atlanta this week. That game was closer than it looked, but it still was a big win for them. They're still moving in the right direction. New offense, new defense, and to still be 4-3 up on the Niners in the division with the 3-game losing streak, I think all things considered is a pretty good outcome. So I like their over 8.5. It's plus money. I put them at 9.5 and higher on wins. I like the playoffs, plus 180. I like the division. I still think Seattle Island is maybe where we should have stayed all along.
That was Brandon Anderson on the Action Network podcast talking about why it may be time to hop on Seattle Seahawks futures. You can head over there for a more in-depth breakdown, but let's change gears here and talk about Actionable Week 8 picks. And who better to join me than Evan Abrams, who's also a regular on the TAM Pod and has an article live over on the Action Network website where he breaks down trends to know for every single game, every single week. It's about that time where Evan Abrams, the numbers guy, tells me why I'm either right or wrong on this week's game. Ev Abrams, the numbers guy. Ev. I still have to get that in, Evan, even though it's a little untraditional there, but we got to get right to it. Rams, Vikings, Thursday Night Football. Tell me why I am right or wrong with the LA Rams. Listen, it's a short week for Minnesota. We saw a grueling game against the Detroit Lions, and yes, it's a short week for the Rams, but they're getting healthier. Cooper Kupp expected to return as long as he is not traded. The luck rankings also like the Rams in this one. I just got to throw that out there to make me feel better about myself. And then you look at the Rams. They've kept every game close except for Arizona. We've got McVay against one of the guys in his coaching tree. It always feels like, the dad of the coaching tree always ends up on top by the end of it. It just feels like this is one of those games everyone's expecting a Minnesota bounce back. I'm expecting the Rams to at least keep it close here. So grabbing that key number of 3 is where I'm thinking. Tell me why the trends say I'm either smart here or I might be too far in over my head.
Yeah, well, the dad's getting 3 points at home in this one, so that's a nice start there. But the interesting thing about the line, before I get into this, the look ahead. Now, the look ahead was set way before the season and this and that. Actually, had the Rams -3.5.
Wow.
So you have a large flip just based off of how the season's gone, the injuries, etc., which is interesting nonetheless. But I think the angle to take here is Minnesota coming off being undefeated, an emotional loss, a tough game. So since 1990 in the wildcard era, undefeated teams after suffering their first loss straight up in week 8 or later, they are 29-21 straight up. Sounds good, but they have difficulty covering the number at 22-28 against the spread, which is expected. Now, teams who are undefeated and then suffer their first loss who have to play on Thursday Night Football, which again, short rest, difficult situation, 6-10, 5-11
Wow.
against the spread. So kind of pulls back a little bit. And that kind of points you towards the direction that I'm going to talk about right now, which is Sean McVay. So in McVay's career, he is 19-16-2 against the spread in night games. Pretty mediocre. But if you look on short rest, he's 6-3 against the spread. He started his career 0-3 in that spot, learned and has won and covered 6 in a row. So nice spot for McVay. Now, the thing that's kind of going around everywhere is the impact of the Lions. I've seen it in a few places. So teams after facing Detroit this year, 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread, failing to cover the number by about 25 to 26 points per game, which is crazy in itself. But the last 3 seasons, 14-23 against the spread and on the number. So a little noise, sure, but a little bit of impact, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely feels like maybe some alt lines are in play based on that trend with the Lions. That's where my mind's going. But listen, it's McVay. As long as Stafford and Cooper Kupp are playing for the Rams on Thursday, it feels like the Rams at 3+ is a go. The other one, you mentioned it. The Lions just had an emotional win over the Vikings. The Vikings had the emotional loss. The Lions won on a walk-off field goal. They also have Green Bay Packers next weekend in Green Bay. So I think this is a little sandwich spot, a little look-ahead opportunity. The Titans getting 11 points. You look at the Tennessee Titans and you're like, I mean, it's the Titans. They're atrocious. They're not good. But they're actually, the defense, 11th in DVOA, 6th against the run. I think they can actually, put a little bit of a stoppage on the Lions, who I don't expect to flash, flea flickers and all these other crazy plays that they can bring out of their bag, and they're going to save it for Green Bay. So I think this is rock bottom of the market. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. I don't think that really matters much for the Titans, to be honest with you. I just think this is, the ultimate buy low spot, trash bag, hold your nose, get the Titans at over 10.5. What are the numbers saying on this one? Is this the classic look ahead spot, or am I just, on a war zone path that is Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell?
Yeah, breaking news to anyone out there, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't move the line, especially for the Titans. But looking at this line in itself, we got some history, Charles. So the Lions are 11-point favorites this week at the current moment. If it closes at 11 or higher, this would be the largest spread for the Detroit Lions as a favorite since September of 1996.
Wow.
Against the Bucs. They were a 12-point favorite behind 125 rushing yards by Barry Sanders. That was 459 games ago for Detroit. So this is a whole new world in terms of the circumstances. Now, you look at the number in itself. I think it's just probably worth mentioning. In the regular season, past 4 years, the Lions are 40-17 against the spread. 70%. Now, entering the year, they had the best 3-year stretch against the spread for any team since the 16-18 Patriots. And at this rate, through 4 years, they would be the best covering team in the wildcard era since 1990. So you are going up against a bit of a juggernaut here, but let me give you a little bit of some confidence in this one, because I kind of like your Tennessee number. And I think there is some value there just based off how great they've been playing. So teams averaging 30 points per game plus are just 58-64 and 2 against the spread as a double-digit favorite of the last 20 years in the regular season. After the month of September, that drops to 14-16 ATS. Now, when those teams are on a 4+ game win streak, 24-34 against the spread. I gave you 3 numbers. All 3 of them were under 500 ATS. Tight margins. A lot of different circumstances going into each of them, but it's just probably telling you that the line is a tad bit high. And again, you don't know Levis, you don't know Rudolph. I think you would probably prefer Rudolph just because looking inside the numbers, less turnover worthy throws. I think Rudolph is either 10-5 or 10-6 against the spread in his career. So he usually keeps those games close. So you're gonna hope for that in this one.
Yeah, overwhelming majority of the tickets coming in on Detroit. It feels like one of those spots where the Titans might get right. And you mentioned September 1996. I was in my first trimester as in my mom's stomach. So throw back to that one. I don't remember that. Let's move to the other one here. The Las Vegas Raiders +10 against Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, who the hell is left in Kansas City? That's my question for you. Juju Smith-Schuster is out. Isaiah Pacheco, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, all out. DeAndre Hopkins is coming, but we talked about it. He's not moving a line, and even if he suits up, he's not going to be familiar with this offensive playbook. We saw Amari Cooper. Yeah, he caught the touchdown, but he was largely a non-factor for Buffalo in that first game. Mahomes as a favorite of 7 or more. I did my own research. 44% against the spread, so I'm liking this number above 10. I think it's one of those backdoor opportunities. Also, just a large number in general. The Chiefs, we know how good they are at just wasting clock. Mahomes in particular, those second half unders just, chugging away. He won't put up extra points. He'll play for, just running out the clock. I know the Raiders are bad. I honestly feel more confident with Gardner Minshew over O'Connell. I know he lets it swing, but I definitely feel more confident with him under center. So do the trends agree with me on the Vegas Raiders catching 10 against the Chiefs?
I'll go through a few little nuggets here just to kind of set you up. So the thing I've found interesting with the Raiders is they're having a tough time even staying close in games this year. They've fallen behind by double digits in each of their 7 games. They're just the 4th team to do that over the last 30 years. So they are falling behind, which is never a good sign unless you're down 10 and then Mahomes is going to come back. Unless you're up 10, then Mahomes is going to come back. But they've been falling behind, so not great there. But then you look at Kansas City. So 6-0. And they're only plus 43 in terms of margin this season. Now, in the Super Bowl era, you've only had 3 teams with a worse point differential than Kansas City to start 6-0. So the margins are razor thin. They haven't beaten a team by 20 plus in 27 consecutive games. So they're not blowing people out. Even if you're within that range, you expect maybe Vegas to get that touchdown to let you back in. That is the longest streak since the 2005 Ravens. And then I'll leave you with this. Now, we haven't had our first team in this spot this year, but we might be getting our first double-digit division dog. In November earlier, they are 85, 56, and 6 against the spread since 2003, 60% with a 16% return on investment. I have a hard time telling you to take Kansas City in this one. Mahomes is 6-0 against a second half spread this year, tied for the best record in the NFL with Caleb Williams.
Wow.
But in this circumstance, I would probably say the Raiders at 10 is a fine play. On the round table we did yesterday with Brandon Anderson and Glasheen, we were trying to talk about all the double-digit dogs this week, anyone we like the best. I took the Raiders, so I'm with you in this one, and I think that this number is just a little high. I'm a guy who tends to try to fade Mahomes, and my wallet is showing for it. So I'm gonna back you in this one, Charles.
Yeah, luckily I held off last week with the 49ers on deck. Yeah. I'm like, all right, Mahomes less than 3. I'm gonna have to stay away. Yeah. I learned the hard way in the Super Bowl last year. So this time though, fading off that win. Travis Kelce he was too busy partying in the offseason, not fully in shape right now. He's got love bug eyes and all of that. So I think that the Raiders can keep it close here. It's ugly. I'm coming to you with the Raiders. I'm coming to you with the Titans and the Rams against, juggernaut offenses thus far. But that's why we have to discuss it. Hopefully the
3 dogs. What could go wrong?
I know 3 dogs after the road favorites and just favorites in general have been dominating the NFL last couple of weeks. But Evan Abrams, appreciates you hopping on, and we'll talk again next week.
See you later, Charles.
And just a reminder that any pick we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following us in the award-winning Action Network app under the handle @green.daily. We keep track so you don't have to. And that's going to be all for Green.Daily on this Wednesday. Enjoy the basketball. Enjoy the college football as well. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, to talk more about that Vikings and Rams game and a little bit of Action Island as well. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern.